Good evening, everybody. It is Saturday, just past 7:35 p.m. and wow, they're doing donuts on the Market Square ice skating rink right now with the Zamboni/golf cart. I've never seen them do that before. That was impressive. Glad we could catch that live on this live stream right now. And I guess that's how they get in the parking spot. I guess they're drifting on the ice before they back the Zamboni back into its little parking spot. And then the crowd that has been out there this evening has been very impressive that they can even get that many people on the ice rink all at the same time. And I don't blame people for being out there because it feels nice on this Saturday evening. In fact, we had a high of 61 degrees today in Knoxville. That is the warmest day that we have had since the day before Thanksgiving. So in more than 2 weeks, by a long shot, it's the warmest temperature that we've had. And it's still 51 degrees right now in Knoxville. So that is actually right around what our average high would be. Like I said, I don't blame people for being out there. It is a little bit colder in our northern counties, though. Up onto the plateau, Jamestown is down to 42, Huntsville at 41, Williamsburg, Kentucky already down to 38 degrees. If I widen out this view, this is why we're doing this Facebook Live. Here comes the cold front, folks. It has just now made its way into northern portions of Kentucky. Lexington is down to 31, Paducah is down to 29, St. Louis 15, and Indianapolis down to 12. And that Arctic air is going to be flowing here into East Tennessee as we go throughout the overnight hours tonight, which means it's going to be shockingly colder when you wake up tomorrow morning than it is right now. So that's why we have a weather impact alert and why we're doing this special live stream to help make sure that people are not caught off guard by this suddenly colder air that's going to be moving in. Now, talking about the colder air, we do have a chance for a little bit of precipitation with this front. It doesn't have a lot of moisture to work with, but it does have enough to where we're starting to see some very, very light rain showers back in Middle Tennessee right now. A lot of that may not even be reaching the ground, but there is a chance for some light rain showers to make their way into the Tennessee Valley area. Now, the northern plateau and southeast Kentucky are getting cold enough now to where you might actually have a little bit of a wintry mix, maybe some rain mixed with some sleet pellets or maybe some snowflakes mixed in there too. And this is all coming within the next couple of hours. So by around 11 p.m. tonight, here's what might be some tiny little raindrops reaching the surface and up into southeast Kentucky and the northern plateau. Again, maybe a very, very light wintry mix. But here's the thing. The moisture is going to be exiting before the core of the cold air can get here. So there is some light pink showing up on the plateau and in our northern counties very early tomorrow morning, we'll call it in the middle of the night, and up into the mountains. That's where we have the best chance of any light accumulation. But realistically, the moisture is going to be getting out of here before the cold air arrives. So really, this is not an event when we talk about the precipitation. It's all about the temperatures, and that is why we have the weather impact alert. It goes into effect tonight at about midnight and lasts through the entire day on Sunday and into the first half of the day Monday. The reason we're doing this is because of the bitterly cold temperatures and how sharply much colder it's going to be tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon, temperatures are going to be 30 plus degrees colder than they were this afternoon. Yeah, it's going to be very, very cold. And then it's going to be windy, which means that our actual air temperatures won't get above freezing tomorrow afternoon, and then the wind chills will be in the teens, despite the sunshine. Just let that sink in. That is going to be a lot colder than low 60s and sunshine that we had this afternoon, and that's why we need folks to be prepared by dressing warmly and using safe heating sources. Make sure that if you are going to be using a space heater, you keep it at least 3 feet away from any kind of flammable objects. This, unfortunately, is the time of year when we have these cold snaps where we do see an uptick in house fires. So we want folks to be smart and safe about the way that you're staying warm. And when you're dressing to go outside, dress in layers. That helps to retain the body heat and accessorize. Hats, gloves, scarves, all a great idea, ways to keep that body heat in if you do have to be outside. And don't forget about your pets. Tonight, I know it's not cold right now, but it will be by tomorrow morning. So bring them indoors or make sure they have at least some warm shelter and access to fresh, unfrozen water. Sometimes when we have a long duration of temperatures being below freezing, like we will coming up, it could be 36 hours or so that we're below freezing. Their water bowls might freeze. So you want to make sure that they have fresh, unfrozen water to stay hydrated and healthy during these cold conditions. In fact, it's going to be so cold that we have cold weather advisories that have been issued. So they're kind of complicated because they all start at different times and have different criteria, but they all end at 10 a.m. on Monday. So that's the one thing they do have in common. First, Cumberland and Fenchurch County will start their cold weather advisory tonight at midnight, which is actually midnight Central Time, so 1 a.m. Eastern Time. And then the rest of these areas that are shaded in that light blue will start their cold weather advisories at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. This is for the potential of wind chills as cold as 0 or 10 degrees below 0 in some places. When I say shockingly cold, that's what I'm talking about. Tonight and tomorrow are not going to be the time to be in the mountains. That's where wind chills could get as cold as 15 below 0. So like I said, we don't want folks outside if you don't have to be. And then the valley gets added into the cold weather advisory beginning at 5 p.m. tomorrow. And that's for wind chills possibly as low as 0 degrees from after sunset Sunday evening overnight. So I'm talking if you do venture out tomorrow, and then the sun goes down, it is going to feel extremely cold when you factor in the wind and the already cold temperatures, dangerously cold as a matter of fact. Actually, at temperatures like this, frostbite is a concern, and so is hypothermia. So we really need folks to be smart and be safe throughout the whole day Sunday, but especially once the sun goes down and overnight Sunday night into the first parts of the day on Monday. And that's why our weather impact alert actually goes into Monday, because these cold weather advisories also include the time when kids are heading off to school on Monday morning and folks are heading out the door to go to work. So this is going to be a very impactful, hopefully short-lived cold spell. So tonight, here's your actual air temperatures. Yeah, it's going to be a lot colder by tomorrow morning, down into the teens on the plateau. Now, it takes a little while for that very dense cold air to get up and over the edge of the plateau and down into the valley. So that's why we won't be in the teens in the lower elevations early tomorrow morning, but that cold air will continue to move in as we go throughout the day, which is why our temperatures won't really rise very much from how we start the day at sunrise. Here's what your wind chills could be tomorrow morning. Down into the very low single digits, if not below 0, up on the plateau and in our northern Tennessee counties. And even though the coldest air hasn't gotten to the valley yet, we could start the day in the teens tomorrow morning too. This is 3:30 tomorrow afternoon. And that's what it could feel like because of the very gusty winds. The winds could gust as high as 25, maybe 30 miles per hour out of the north, pushing in that cold air. This is what things could look like at 8 p.m. So that's why I was saying as soon as the sun goes down, we've still got the wind, and now you've lost the warmth of the sun, and boom, those wind chills really drop, again, down below 0 possible, up on the plateau and down into the low to mid single digits down into the valley. Now overnight, Sunday night into Monday morning, the winds are going to lighten up, so that's going to help to take a little bit of the edge off, but that's still cold, and that again is what folks could be dealing with when you head out the door early on Monday morning, which is why the weather impact alert goes until then. The actual air temperatures very similar in the upper single digits to low teens. I did a little bit of digging to see when the last time was that we had temperatures this cold in the month of December, and you have to go back 3 years to December of 2022. Do y'all remember that? It was an Arctic blast that came through here. We had a low of 4 degrees. Pipes were bursting everywhere. It was a mess. And this was in December 3 years ago. We're not going quite that cold with the actual air temperatures, and the duration of this event won't be as long, so we're not expecting impacts like that. But nonetheless, it has been at least 3 years since we had that exceptional cold snap back in December of 2022. We did have lows down into the low teens in December of 2020, very briefly, a low of 11 and 14. It was another cold snap in December of 2020, but beyond that, you have to go back to 2010 since we've had temperatures this cold in the month of December. We do not do this that often in the month of December. So that's also why we're trying to really let people know about this, because technically winter hasn't even started yet, and we're talking about these very, very cold temperatures. Now here's the key factor. It's not going to last that long. It's going to be really cold on Sunday. It's going to stay cold on Monday afternoon. And then we're right back above average by midweek. In fact, highs could be back close to 60 degrees by Thursday. How's that for East Tennessee doing East Tennessee things as we're starting to get close to the cold weather season? By the way, we are not alone in having to deal with all of this. Check out some of these temperatures around the rest of the country when I'm talking about how cold it is. So the actual air temperature in Bismarck, Sioux Falls, and Minneapolis is at 1 degree below 0. Chicago has now fallen to 9. The wind chill right now in those areas, 16 below 0 in Bismarck and 19 degrees below 0 in Minneapolis. Remember, the actual air temperature was 9. It feels like 5 below in Chicago. Talk about the cold and windy city. Those are the nicknames for that area. And just out of curiosity, let me flip this over here. It is a lot colder in these locations than it was at this time yesterday. And that's the shock value that comes with this front, is just how fast it's going to get cold. Cold weather alerts have been issued all the way from the U.S.-Canadian border down to the Gulf Coast and the coastal Carolinas. Where you see those really dark blue colors right there, those are extreme cold warnings. So we're not alone in having to deal with this. It is unusually cold in all of these locations that have all these alerts. And again, that does include our entire viewing area at some point or another, all the way until 10 a.m. on Monday. Yeah, get ready for this, folks. Buckle up. Sorry about all of it, by the way. I hate being the messenger of bad news. Again, we're not really dealing with precipitation too much this time around, other than some light rain showers or maybe a light wintry mix in our northern and high elevation areas. It's all about the cold. So here's what wind chills could look like through the whole day on Sunday. Remember, this is a sunny day and it's going to be windy. So the actual air temperature stay below freezing and it feels like the teens and low 20s all day, and then drops into the single digits as soon as the sun goes down. Stays in the single digits with the wind chills all the way into Monday morning when kids are heading off to school and when folks are heading out to work. So again, weather impact alert all night tonight, all day Sunday, and through the first half of the day on Monday. We warm back up next week, and then the next weather system starts to move in Wednesday, Thursday, Friday timeframe. Models are still trying to come into agreement on how deep that trough is going to be, so how cool we'll get behind it, and also how much moisture there is to work with. The two models are starting to come into agreement that we will have the front passing through on Thursday and high rain chances on Thursday. No thunderstorms, just high rain chances on Thursday, and that we'll get warm before the front moves through. One model wants to bring in some of the rain on Wednesday, so we'll check back for updates there. We might have some showers on Wednesday. And then that same model wants to keep the rain chances around into early Friday, but is trending drier. The other model is already dry, so we may see rain chances added to part of Wednesday and taken off of Friday. That's the current trend, but we'll see. And then these temperatures on Friday and Saturday may fluctuate a little bit as we get closer to it, depending on how deep that trough ends up being, how much cold air can come down on the backside. But it does look like with the system passing through, this should be almost completely rain coming through. So we're not really talking about a wintry weather event, except in the high elevations of the mountains potentially. And then one model tries to bring in some rain again Saturday night into the day on Sunday. So that's all just thinking ahead, looking ahead. And I know a lot of folks want to know what's happening when we get a little bit closer to the week of Christmas. Well, if you think it's uncertain on day 6 and day 7, it is even more uncertain on day, 14, 10 to 14 out there. I will say that the Climate Prediction Center's outlook for that time frame, getting out that far, is pretty high confidence in temperatures being above average. But the average temperature on Christmas Day is 49 degrees. So if we hit 50, we technically fall into the red here. All I'm saying is just don't count the toys in your stockings yet, to put it into Christmas terms here. We're going to have to wait and see kind of how things evolve as we get closer to the holiday time frame. Happy Hanukkah to those who celebrate, beginning tomorrow at sundown. And it's going to be really cold because that's when we have that weather impact alert lasting into the first half of the day on Monday. Again, we do warm up as we go into the rest of the week. And just check back for updates to the forecast and be prepared to stay warm as that Arctic air moves into the area overnight tonight. We'll have more updates as we go throughout the evening.